Well, we got Joey Galloway now is really coming on full board with Georgia. The number one Dogs taking on the Gators this weekend. And Tuesday night, Joey Galloway had this to say about Georgia when they were talking about this. Let me set the scene here. This is Kirk, Joey Galloway, David Pollock, and company talking about scenarios for the playoff and what happens with this and what happens with Georgia and so forth. And there was discussion about Alabama as well in there. Obviously, the Tide at this stage are going to need to run the table from here on out. I mean, they're going to need to run the table to get to Atlanta, and they're not going to lose that game and get in. Alabama. I think Georgia could lose that game and get in, but Alabama's not going to, not with two losses. And Joey Galloway had this to say: it's tough to see Georgia losing a football game the way they're playing this year. And you go into Jacksonville, and there's just so much negativity that's always associated with it because of the 1990s, which kind of skips over the recent history in Jacksonville as well as the 70s and 80s down there. But nobody can be negative like Georgia fans. They're definitely the best at it. Congratulations, fellas. I think Joey Galloway's right. I mean, you look at the odds, and right now, Georgia has a 45% chance to win the national championship. That's almost more than double anybody else. And that's just betting odds. So that's a pretty healthy situation to be in if you're Georgia. And they're not, we've not seen the best Georgia yet. We've seen Georgia that's hobbled along the way offensively and defensively. I mean, let's not forget there's been a fair amount, not a ton, but there's been a fair amount of injuries on the defensive side as well. If Georgia continues to play the way they have, or if they play better, which is I actually anticipate that they will play better in these last 5 games of the regular season, then I think that what Joey Galloway is saying is right. It's hard to pick out somebody who can beat them. I think there are a couple of teams that jump out to me. First of all, and this is a little bit of a reach because I don't think they'll play them, is Mississippi. And it's a reach because they're probably not going to play them, but it's also a reach because Ole Miss can't stop anybody, and that's been a real problem for them along the way. And we know no matter what that Georgia's going to slow down people on offense. They may not stop them completely, but they're going to slow them down. This is a team that's not permitted more than 2 touchdowns in any game. So I think Ole Miss, if they were to, they need a lot of magic to get to Atlanta, but if they could get there, Matt Corral, he's a dangerous player. I think after that, you look at Alabama. Obviously, there's some voodoo there for Georgia, but Georgia's the better team this year. I think maybe with the exception of 2017, every time they played them with all of it on the line, 12, 17, 18, 20. I don't know if it was all on the line in that game, but more often than not lately, Georgia's not been the better team. I don't think you can say that anymore. I mean, I think they are the better team. How clear that is up to you. You can say that. It's relatively clear to me that Georgia is the better team when comparing them to Alabama. So I think that, but I think getting back to the point here, Alabama and Bryce Young have the capability to score, and whenever you can score, you can win. I think that for Alabama, they're going to have to get to Atlanta. I mean, Georgia's path to Atlanta, they can drop a game. They'd have to win in Atlanta, but they can drop a game. I'm not sure really where they're going to drop a game. This game against the Gators, possibly against Tennessee up there. Missouri stands no chance of beating Georgia, so that's not going to be the case. But when you look at this situation, Alabama, there's going to be part of Georgia that thinks, we hadn't beaten these guys. I'll tell you this, though. A season ago, behind the scenes, Georgia felt like they helped Alabama a lot. They felt like they stopped the run game too quick. They felt like that game was there to be won, and they didn't win it. Now, no one said this, but Alabama was the better team. I mean, I think it's clear. So there's going to be plenty of confidence defensively that they can stop Alabama because they don't have the same weapons. I mean, Bryce Young's a really good quarterback, but Mac Jones was on fire last year. The running back situation is different, and clearly the receivers are different, although Alabama's got some hell-on-wheels receivers too. But I think Alabama certainly is a team that could beat Georgia, and I also think there's two more. I'm gonna talk about one real quick because I don't know about them, which is Oklahoma. You know, I think Oklahoma is one of the few situations where they clearly have a better offense than Georgia, but they, as a team, it's just hard to, they don't play Georgia's offense with their offense, and they just have not looked good the whole year. But they're undefeated, they can score, and Oklahoma, I don't know. So I kind of doubt Oklahoma, but let's just see. And then finally, and I think the biggest threat is Ohio State. I mean, I think Ohio State has started playing better. Georgia would be favored in that game maybe by about 8 or 9, something like that. It wouldn't be a massive line. They'd be favored against Alabama too, but I don't know that it would be much more than a field goal, maybe. So, I think Ohio State's got issues defensively, and they have not played well. They have not played against good teams. When you look at Ohio State, now listen, you can't help who you play in that day. I mean, if you play Vanderbilt, you need to play well against Vanderbilt. And Ohio State's been playing the likes of Vanderbilt lately. I mean, when you look at their opening of the season, it was not great. The game against Minnesota, they were allowing a lot of run yards there. That's an issue. Obviously, they lost to Oregon. They allowed 20 points to Tulsa. So their last 5 wins have come over Tulsa, Akron, Rutgers, Maryland, and Indiana. Those are not good teams. That's the stretch. I mean, Georgia's going to go through a tougher stretch at the end of this season than Ohio State just went through. Now, the close for Ohio State, yeah, that's pretty tough. They're dealing with Penn State this week. They go to Nebraska, who they should crush. Purdue is terrible. And then they play Michigan State and Michigan in back-to-back weeks. But when Joey Galloway's talking about, it's tough to see Georgia losing a game the way they're playing this year. I mean, he's right. I don't know. It is tough for me to see it right now. I also know that you have to get through a game. But people are forgetting that at the beginning of the season, Georgia did have to get through a game. It's almost like that Clemson game doesn't exist anymore because Clemson's so bad. But they had to get through that game. And Clemson of the start of this season is not the Clemson we're seeing right now. So, it's looking like they're going to end up third place in their division in the ACC. So that's not at all what anybody expected. But that was probably the game that Georgia had to get through. They might have to get through another one. We're just going to have to see. But we have seen lately, 18, 19, and 20, that the teams that win the national championship are two things. They are undefeated, and they are also teams that make you talk about them being the greatest either team in college football history or units in college football history. I think in 18, the case for Clemson's team to be the greatest in history was pretty well defunct a year later. So that you can't do that. But that was a hellified defense and a very good offense. LSU's offense in 2019 is probably the greatest offense I've ever seen. A year later, Alabama was probably the best team I've ever seen because LSU didn't quite have the defense. Will people be saying that about Georgia? I think the other question is, how much longer does it take for this offense to wake up and really go? They're cooking with gas right now, but they could really get going if guys get healthy. Okay, no matter who the quarterback is. And that's one thing I'm going to be watching for. Let's talk about this more over on dogpost.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the website.